Christian group criticizes government proposals targeting homeschool parents. The Christian Institute has hit out at intrusive and burdensome proposals to force parents who educate their children at home to report their involvement in extracurriculars, including Sunday school. This is some of the most egregious and heavy-handed legislation I have ever seen. And I kept thinking, what in the world? Then I realized this was a bill or whatever they call it in the British Parliament. And it was actually debated just about a week ago. And somebody said that the goal is to put children at the center of government, which is exactly what we don't want happening to our children. Our children do not belong to the government. So I understand that this is a piece of legislation in Great Britain. And why am I even talking about it here? Because this is a very small world. And we can see things that happen in other countries come to our country. And we have this notion, some of us have this notion today, that because homeschooling is much more prevalent than it ever has been, we don't have any enemies. That is not true, and we need to be aware of that. And so let me just point out, in 2020, Elizabeth Bartholet, who was a professor of law at Harvard University in the law school, wrote this piece which called for a presumptive ban on homeschooling. And it was right before COVID, when everybody shut down, when everything shut down and everybody started homeschooling.
Yeah. So everyone was homeschooling.
Yes. So she lost a little bit of momentum, but we have to remember, we have people out there who think our children are controlled by the government. So I want to give you this example from my own life. I had been homeschooling now for a while, and my kids were probably in high school. And I was speaking at a leadership forum for up-and-coming leaders in South Carolina. And so I was tasked with telling them about homeschooling. And so I did my little speech on homeschooling. And I asked for questions. And this woman asks, "Don't you feel guilty for homeschooling your kids?" Now, I had been asked a lot of questions, but never that one. And I said, "Why should I feel guilt for homeschooling them from your perspective?" And she said, "Well, first of all, the school district is missing out on two parents who would be very involved in their kids' lives, and we need involved parents. Then they're losing out on the money they would get from the state to be in the local school district, and heavens knows the school districts need every penny they can get from the state. And then the third thing was, she said that they probably have great test scores, and we need those test scores in school districts."
Hey, at least she complimented you. She assumed they had good test scores.
And so I looked at her and I said, "Who do you think my kids belong to anyway?" And there was dead silence in this room, Caleb. And so this shows what my life was like. So I pulled out a piece of paper from my purse and I said, "I want to read this to you. The fundamental theory of liberty upon which all governments in this union repose excludes any general power of the state to standardize its children by forcing them to accept instruction from public teachers only. The child is not the mere creature of the state. Those who nurture him and direct his destiny have the right, coupled with the high duty, to recognize and prepare him for additional obligations." So after I read this, the woman says to me, "Where did you get that?"
Oh, gosh.
I'm assuming she was thinking, where did you get that right-wing propaganda?
Right.
And I said, well, that was actually a Supreme Court decision in 1925, Pierce versus the Society of Sisters. And again, there was total silence in this room.
Wow.
Because we've become a culture that has not embraced this notion expressed in the Supreme Court decision, we come into contact with a lot of people who really think our kids are the mere creature of the state, or at least belong partially to the state. Here we have the Bill of Rights. And the First Amendment says, "Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or of the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances." We have the Bill of Rights on our side in this country, but we need to make sure we stand in that freedom and don't allow ourselves to be co-opted by the thoughts of the culture.